You have to, or raise it up, John. One noche.
At least some people know some Portuguese in here. Tudo bem. How are you? So, when I get us started off talking a little bit about the history that we have, the First Presbyterian has with at Felipe Camarao and really Brazil as a whole. So, some of our more recent friends, but in fact we go back with this church with Brazil all the way to 2001. Our pastor at the time, Gordon Turnbull, had a connection with some missionaries in Brazil, the Fonestocks, and was interested in increasing kind of our mission work. And so sent a couple of emissaries, so to speak, John Van and Beth Flanagan, down to see the Fonestocks and see northeast Brazil and what opportunities might be there for First Presbyterian Church. The opportunities look good, and so John and Beth came back and made a presentation. So the following year, in 2002, we sent a group of 9 of us. I like to call it, you know, that it was kind of like the Lord of the Rings, you know, the 9 that went down. So, I was one of that young man, and Beth again, and a number of us went down and to this city on the northeast, Natal, that you're familiar with, and then we went into the interior, this semi-arid region, the Sertão, to a town called Patos, and then visited a couple other where there was a lot of Presbyterian involvement there from the U.S. Church. There are, in fact, a Presbyterian church or denomination in Brazil that the U.S. Church was very connected with. And so there were projects down there. We saw some projects in Patos in particular, and then we came back to Natal the night before we were supposed to leave and visited this small church in this kind of barrio that Paul Fonstock was serving as an interim pastor, this missionary and his wife down in Brazil. And then the next morning, the day of our departure, we sat down with the Fonestocks, our team did, and talked about what kind of project would we be doing. And they put before us this small church in this coastal town, this neighborhood, outside of Natal, this church of Felipe Camarao. And they said, this church really needs a pastor and could use pastoral support to call somebody to replace me, the missionary, who I'm on an interim basis. And also, they really, as you saw, could use some renovations to their church, to make it more vibrant and more welcoming. And also, much like what you saw in this other city that you visited, this neighborhood could use a preschool. We could put a preschool to reach out and just help the families in this neighborhood because, among other things, this neighborhood of 45,000, this very impoverished neighborhood, they've never had anyone from that neighborhood go to university, go to college. And part of the reason they've never had anybody go to college is because they start off so far behind when they get into school that they usually drop out. And if we had a preschool to at least prepare some of these kids to be kind of on level with others when they got into school, there would be a much greater chance of them at least graduating from high school, much less actually even going to college. And so we thought that over, we brought that back to First Pres, and they said, yeah, we want to do that. And so that was the beginning of this relationship. In fact, the next several years, so 2 of us went the following year. We had another team that went about a year and a half after that. Then we had a couple more of us go down for some Presbyterian meetings. And then in 2005, we sent a big crowd with families and kids and made this big visit to Felipe Camarao. In that time, they called this pastor, Pastor Junior, this young seminary graduate who really had the gifts that it took to bring this church. They were renovating the church and it looked so much better, was so much more pleasant to visit. And behind the church, as they kind of planned, they were building this preschool that would start to draw in kids from the neighborhood. And once they got that preschool started, it was this private thing, but First Pres was supporting the teachers and the kids. And they would actually, as registration time rolled around for the school year, they would have families in the late hours the night before start lining up to register to get into that school. It was that popular, it was that big a draw. And the church was growing. Over the years now, we've maintained this relationship, and we've done 16 trips now. We've had 131 individuals from our congregation make trips, many of whom have made multiple trips. I myself have, this past summer, that was trip number 8 for me. And so we've built this relationship, and now Pastor Juan Batista is the pastor and has been for several years, and you all are familiar with he and his wife was Angela and many of the others. We have relationships with some of the people there that go back years. A young kind of neighborhood and a young church, and so for some of us, we've seen these people go from, in some cases, kids to adults, and in some cases from, teenagers or young adults to, very mature leaders. We've seen some that were, youth or young adults in the church that are now, there's one that's a missionary in the Amazon, Dell. We've seen them, take on positions. And then the other kind of almost ironic thing about this church is that one time a missionary couple that was serving churches in this region of Brazil, Isaac and Pauline Rosenbaum, who at one point was actually, before Paul Funstock got at this church, was actually involved with this church. Pauline Rosenbaum is from a place called Bristol, Tennessee. And in fact, not only, and served many years down there, and in fact, the last time we gave a presentation, her extended family was here. Not only was, do we have that connection, but one of the churches that she served in that region in northeast Brazil actually had this young kid named João Batista, who later on became, a very successful individual and eventually a pastor, including now the pastor at this church, Felipe Camarao. So our connections to this church are on multiple levels, and they continue to pray and bless us, and I feel like we continue to pray and bless them. And so I think we've got a few of those stories for you from our team members tonight to share with you the things they saw and the ways that they feel blessed. So I will turn it over.
Hey friends, my name is Katie Arnold, and I know most of you, but I'm the youth minister here. And I don't want to take up too much time because I want you to hear their stories. But why do I love taking students to Brazil, and why is this important to me? You'll hear over and over again, it's the friendships. And you won't hear them talk a lot about the work. We do work, we work hard, we sweat a lot. But you'll hear them talk about these friendships that are so important. And I think about my prayer partner this year. She said, a lot of times during the year, we start to feel like we're really alone. We're just in the trenches, we're alone here. And when you all come, it's just such a reminder that God is bigger than this place, and that we have a community that's so much bigger than this place. And you help revive us and help remind us how big God is. And so, if there's anything that I would love for my students, it's for them to know that their community is much bigger than First Pres. So it's important, and it's exciting, and they get to hear about this growing up, and then they get to go. And I think that's really, really cool. So, yeah.
Hi, I'm Foxy, and as soon as we got to the church, they welcomed us with food and drinks, and they were also excited to show us their hometown. And on a day-to-day basis, we ate breakfast at the hotel, and then we went to the church to begin our day. And for the first few days, we made goodie bags for the children, and we had a small lesson planned for them for the goodie bags. And every day, the cooks at the church made us lunch, and we ate lunch there every day. And after lunch, we all had different tasks assigned to us, either to help the children with crafts or painted different fences at another church. And then after our activity that day, we returned back to the hotel, and we'd shower up and then go back to the church for the service that night. And then after the service, we would go out to dinner, and we went to a different place every night. And on our free day, we went shopping into the beach, and we all had such an amazing time on this trip, and it impacted us all very greatly.
Hi, I'm Autumn. Our trip to Brazil was an experience that I cannot fully express in words. I met many amazing people that had a huge impact on me and my view of life. I will always remember every person I encountered and the memories I had with them. There is one specific moment on the trip that I wanted to share. One day I was playing my ukulele at the church and a guy named Alan came up to me. He played the guitar and asked if he could join me. Although there was an obvious language barrier, it was amazing how we were able to come together to worship God. After we played and sung together for a while, he asked me if I wanted to sing with him during church. I was very nervous to get in front of the whole congregation while we sang in two different languages, but it was an experience that left me in awe. While I was singing in front of the church, it was so moving to see and hear everyone worshiping our God despite our many differences. I learned that God is bigger than a language barrier and that He is always present.
Hey, I'm Cole. So, here's one, I have many stories from this year, but here's one of my favorites. So, while we were planning our trip to Brazil, we were all assigned prayer partners. My prayer partner's name was Patricia, and she was a teacher in school. We were given these prayer partners so we could be praying for them, and so that way before we got there, we kind of know someone there. So anyway, after we arrived in Brazil, on one of the first nights we had planned to officially meet our prayer partner. Some of us had already gotten to meet their own prayer partner throughout the day, but I never got to see mine. But anyways, I was thinking, going forward to that night, I was excited to see my prayer partner. As time went on, almost everyone had gotten to meet their prayer partner, except for me. Katie had gotten my attention and had told me my prayer partner was not there due to personal issues and problems. After being told this, I was very confused and kind of let down on the fact that this person I had been praying for was not in a good state and was not present to meet me. I spent that whole night just confused and asking the question, why? I woke up the next morning and was still kind of down about the whole thing. However, the next day we arrived at the church, and this guy named Duke approached me smiling with his hands behind his back. He took this item from behind his back, and it was a Brazil soccer jersey. And he smiled and told me it was mine from the whole church. The church did this purely because they saw how much it had put me down hearing about my prayer partner, and they wanted me to feel welcome to the community. It really made me feel cared about by the people of the church community in Brazil. It really just shows how kind and compassionate these people are. They do really care about each and every one of us.
Hi, I'm Lauren. And while we were in Brazil, we worked a lot with the school that was in the church. All the kids were between 5 and 10 years old, so for me it was awesome to get to be there with them because I love working with kids. I remember specifically on the first day, we went to work with the church and we went outside to their playground and played with the kids before we left. I was expecting them to be like American kids, shy and quiet, but I was very wrong. As soon as we got out there, the kids started running to us, jumping on us, hugging us, and telling us they loved us and they were happy for us to be there. It was an amazing feeling. When approaching an unfamiliar person or place, many Americans would be shy, quiet, and sometimes even rude and judgmental. So that was what I was expecting going into the trip. But the people of Felipe Camarao were exactly the opposite. Many of them live in great poverty, so I wouldn't have blamed them if they had some resentment towards us since we have it so good here in America. But they were also happy and grateful we were there. epic turning point in my view of not only them, but God as well. I realized that because of their faith in God, they feel just as blessed as we do. Despite their home life, they have faith in God. They have faith that God will give them strength, help them, and watch over them in their day-to-day lives. I realized that God's love circulates throughout everyone, and it is eternal. So since the people of Brazil can feel His love as strongly as they do, then hopefully now that I am back in America, I can spread that strong love throughout Bristol too.
Hello, I'm Ethan. This mission trip to Brazil had a major impact on me and the whole mission team. For me personally, I learned a lot about myself on the trip. I learned how to form relationships with others, no matter the obstacles. I learned to rely on the Lord in the toughest of times. I even learned how to scrape paint off of a metal fence with a butter knife. But most of all, I learned not to take the incredibly blessed life I live for granted. You don't realize how good you really have it over here until you go somewhere like that. And greatest of all, no matter what they were going through in Felipe Camarao, they always had a smile on their face. They taught me that the love of Christ and prayer can get you through anything, and to always have a smile on your face because you are loved.
Hi, I'm Gracie. My experience in Brazil has taught me to have a deeper understanding for people. In Brazil, I got to see what love through Christ looks like. My new friends are extremely close with each other through their church. They worship together frequently. As I got to know everyone, I realized how happy they were through worship. This kind of affection amazed me and inspired me to form these close bonds with people back home. Coming home, I decided that through my church community, I too can have these amazing relationships. As I am a senior in high school and my time with my friends at home is growing short, I have decided to cherish every moment with my church family. But the most important thing to me about this new approach is that I have made great relationships through the love of Christ. I am forever grateful for my new friends in Brazil. They have taught me so many great things about myself, and they have brought me joy that will last the rest of my life.
Hi, my name is Matt Stewart. Coming through written down. So I have a story I'd like to tell, and it's kind of like the impact that this trip had on me. So it was the last night, we just finished worship, we were there, leaving the church, everybody's hugging, waving goodbye, trying to get that last hug in. Everyone was crying, of course, except for me. So and I don't know if this was because I was of course sad. It might have just been I was sitting in a van full of crying females, and I was trying to find my man. Yes, that is a joke we'll have to tell everyone soon. So it wasn't like I wasn't sad. I was of course sad we were leaving, but it was almost like when we laid out the trip, I knew we'd be leaving that night. I was prepared for leaving that night. I was prepared to get on the flight the next morning. I was prepared to head home. And so that was the plan. We got in the van, we went back to the hotel, got up the next morning, and we came home on the flight. We got back through the church parking lot. All of our team members here, we hugged each other, said goodbye, thanks for a great trip, and we all went home, just as planned. I got home, met my parents, greeted them, they asked what the trip was. I was of course tired, so I went right to sleep. So they were mad I didn't talk to them. And then for some reason they had to leave that later that night for dinner, so I was home alone. So I had made some dinner and I sat down on the couch, and without even turning the TV on or anything, I burst into tears. It was all of a sudden, God put a million thoughts in my head of what this trip did to me, just like that. I was just sitting on my couch, bursting into tears. And so Katie can tell you, I texted Katie, and I told her that right then. Just thank you for a great trip. But it's just like all the people here had said, this trip was such a great impact on all of us. The relationships we built, the people we met, the things God did for us. I may not have shown it in Brazil, but it did show when I got home. And so I think coming back to America, especially, this trip was open to juniors and seniors when it first opened to go on, but we're all seniors here. And so I think it's kind of a calling for us to come back and be these huge leaders coming into our senior year of high school. I think we all get something out of it individually, but to come back as a team, I think God's really calling us to come back and serve as a group and lead this school and our community and this church and everything that we do. Always remember where God has us from. So, thank you.
We have 3 students who have a volleyball game tonight, and so they are not able to be here, but they recorded a little video for you. And me and Lance and Reese had just gone walking down the street, and we were kind of looking around, and we saw like a shop, and out in front of the shop was like a coconut, and we've seen coconuts, but I've never really like drank out of a coconut before, and I got really excited and I was like, you guys just drink coconuts, like this is just something normal. And he was like, do you want one? And I like looked at my backpack and I was like, well, I don't have any money, so I can't pay for it. And he like instantly was like, I've got it. And I didn't know how much financially he had, but I'm assuming it wasn't a lot. And he bought it for like me and 5 others, even other Brazilians who bought coconuts for it. And it was just awesome to see how excited he was to show us this part of his culture. And it like opened up my eyes to see how God was working for him. Even though he didn't go to that church, he still like went out of his way to do that for me, and he like was happy to see us being happy. And then the next day, we went to like a shop, and he had bought me a coconut keychain and gave it to me after. And it was just awesome to see like how he remembered how happy that had made us, and how he knew that that had brought me joy. And then the keychain is something that I'll always be able to remember him by, and remember the trip by, and just how like God was showing his love through that.
I enjoyed like the worship services and like hearing different languages coming together and like all singing the same song, and just like all being singing and it didn't sound like it. We were singing Reckless Love, and just how his little sister came up to me, and after like the bridge where it gets super like hyped up, the final chorus, she like held my hand and we sang it like together, and that was like a really exciting time. I would say kind of like opening up all of our eyes to like see what people in other parts of the world are going through, so that we're able to like truly be thankful for everything that we have here. And like she said, like set an example for like the younger.
We got there, and the first hour or two we were in a van, and just like looking at the streets, it was almost like we were in a movie. We like were seeing it and we were seeing it happen, but it didn't really feel like we were in it until we got to go to a home visit and get to walk, and we got to actually walk the streets.
And at the home visit, we went to this woman's house, and she was just telling us her story. And the house was very small. And it was like 4 people staying in it. And she was struggling, also a lot of like body functions. And the only like money that she made was picking up the trash off the side of the road, which isn't a lot at all, especially to provide for like 3 other people living in her house. And it was really cool to see how like the church and the community helped impacted her and helped her like see God through them. And it shows you how much just like a community and like a person can like impact others to see God too.
John Batista looked at us and he said, you guys are missionaries. You guys have the opportunity to do this. And it just hit me like, we have all the opportunity, even in our community, to be able to go out and we can drive and go see different people who we know don't know God, who haven't found Christ yet. And we can go and share God's love. And they have a much harder time doing that than we do, yet they still are doing it. And it just really hit me on how much I've been taking that for granted, and just how we're able to be able to give back.
And God transformed me into this experience by showing me like what His love actually is, and it's not through money or that it's just being with people and love God just as much as.
I want to say thank you so much for all the prayers and all the donations too. Because when the kids open the bags, they were all so excited. And church just had fun. Us give it to them.
Thank you for everyone who gave money and prayed for us, because traveling took a long time and anything could have happened, but everything worked out and all of the changed my life forever.
This trip means a lot to me because I grew up in the church and I'd always heard about the Brazil trip, and I'd always seen people come back and hear about how much they've been moved. And I would just like to thank you guys for helping me have that opportunity and for me to be able to go over there, and it completely changed my life too. So thank you guys so much.
Relationships, a connection, association, or involvement, an emotional or other connection between people. That's what First Presbyterian Church of Bristol has been doing since 2001, building relationships in all aspects of ministry with our church partners in Felipe Camarao. A couple of years into our trips, Pastor Jr. asked the team if we could add a women's night. Jackie Burt was a part of that year's team, and as a physician, she agreed to present and answer follow-up questions, which turned out to be a very successful evening. Actually, that's where our Women's Heart-to-Heart program originated several years ago. Since then, a women's night has always been scheduled as a part of all of our trips. Those who were invited to the event are the women of Felipe Camarao Church and the mothers of the children in the school. With the additional church plant in Cidade Nova this year, the women from that church were included too. It was reported to us that there were 110 women at this year's event, a lot of whom that I've seen before. I spoke at this year's Women's Evening. I'm a daughter, a mother, a grandmother, a sister, a cousin, and an aunt, so I really thought I could speak at some level to the struggles of being a woman. As I prepared my thoughts, I felt the Lord nudging me to speak on encouragement. We had a beautiful translator for our evening, Ariel. To begin our time together, the women were asked who had been an encourager in their lives. I was pleased that the microphone was passed several times around the room. It warmed my heart that they felt comfortable enough to speak up. I really think that happened because we continue to build the relationships. Each of us is in a position to be intentional in our observations and to offer a kind word, a kind deed, or an act of support. In preparation for something to give to the women that would offer encouragement, I searched the scriptures. The verses I selected, I then typed out in English, and Google translated them in Portuguese too, replacing the pronouns with the word querida, which means dear one, so that each verse would become a personal message from God to each of the women. Every woman went home with these scriptures, a gift bag that had been assembled by our team, which contained fingernail polish, lipstick, lotion, and a small piece of jewelry. Brazilians are very warm people and love to hug, and so every woman there received a hug from the women on the team. The last part of the evening was an unexpected blessing. I think a part of mission work is understanding the culture in different parts of the world. To backtrack just a little, several months ago I happened to hear a radio report about women's menstrual cycles and the stigma attached to that in third world countries. This normal female cycle in areas of real poverty causes teenage girls to miss lots of school and women to be absent from work. I have never thought about that difficulty ever. So fast forward to the packing of supplies at the church, and Katie mentioned that her mom had assembled and shipped packets to help women deal with menstrual cycles. She showed one of them to us, and it was amazingly useful and simple. Each kit contained practical supplies that a woman could carry, use, launder, and recycle to allow her to stay in school or on the job. Once in Brazil, Katie asked permission from the Angela and Adielsa to see if that would be a good offering at the women's night, and they said yes. Following my talk, Katie pulled out a kit and explained to the women how to use it. Who knew that would be so well received? The packets went instantly. We even had one woman go home and tell a neighbor who came back to ask if there were any more. Katie did a great job presenting, and we are grateful for her mother's insight into women in poverty. This was a very practical form of encouragement along with the scripture and the small gift. Galatians 6:2 says, "Carry one another's burdens, and in this way you will fulfill the law of Christ." That was our goal for the women's event. We did not try to change them. We did not impose our Americanized rules of conduct on them, but rather met them where they were, offering words of scripture and a practical solution for a normal event for women. We treated them as sisters in Christ, women of value.
I'm given the task of talking about being a repeat part of this team. And this was just my second time this year. I went in 2017. And I'm just going to keep this really short. There's a particular teacher that I became friends with on the first trip. Her name was Josie, and we stayed in contact over the 2 years, so I was really excited to be able to see her again. And as I was leaving, we were going to the airport, and I said, hopefully I'll see you again in 2021. And I wanted to read you all the messages. She sent me like 4 messages after that, and I wanted to share those with you all. I've shared them with people on the team before, but she said, I'll be waiting for you in 2021. And your visit, it is an injection of courage and strength for the work of the teachers. And I think that, I'm not exactly sure about their school system, but because it's in a church, I don't think they have the same kinds of support that our kind of school system would have. So, just that we come there and we affirm them in what they're doing, it's just life-giving to them, which in turn affects us as well. And she said, your recognition makes me very happy and sure that someone admires what I do in my work. So again, that's a message straight from teacher Josie. And you'll see her, well, she's been up on some of the pictures, but thank you.
Thank you all very much for being here tonight. It's exciting to share this with you, and I tell you that to think of this wonderful team that we had on this trip, just so grateful for all these young people, what they taught us, and what they taught us about love and relationship, and they're a great example of Christ in action. So I wanted to give some perspective about the past. As John set up so beautifully, just a couple of things about the past. One is, this picture is with Beth Lange with my much younger brother, 2001, and this is the first trip, and this is the first tiny cup of coffee we had on that trip. And neither one of us had any idea what the door was opening for as we move forward. The next picture is that second trip, 2002. Most of the people, those slides, John, you're not on there, and you're on the next slide. Don't worry. You can see familiar faces around this room who were on that trip. And again, at this point, we didn't know about Felipe Camarao. And so we, as John said, got to know them. I think it's created an incredible opportunity for our congregation to share God's love and, frankly, to receive God's love from others. The next picture is the church of Felipe Camarao in 2002. Perhaps we were expectant, but I dare say no one foresaw where we were going to go with this partnership and the far-reaching impact it would have. We've been part of something bigger than we could ever imagine. It's changed so many lives, not the least of which are our own. God's reminded us countless times that it's not about us, but it's about bringing God glory. And our partnership in Brazil has made us really more mindful about opportunities around the world. It opened the door for missions for this church, a door that had not been opened previously. So whether it's local or global, I think Brazil gave us that perspective. And our church has embraced opportunities and reaped the fruit of this connection time and time again. So the temptation is always to think about what do you do, about being transactional. You can't hear someone's going on a mission trip without saying, what are you going to be doing? And I think what we found out, maybe you would agree, Kate said we worked hard, but I don't think I worked that hard. I know John Graham didn't work that hard. But it's 80% relational, maybe 20% transaction and work. So we learned a lot about that. So instead of a mission trip, is it really called a friendship trip, which is what we named it before we left, or a vision trip, getting on the same level with other folks. Our church has responded, as John said. 130 plus people have gone. Those that haven't gone have been part of our team for 17 years, 18 years, through prayer, through giving of resources, through giving of crayons and supplies. This church has embraced these mission efforts so beautifully. And not only that, we've also welcomed our Brazilian friends here. 3 times we've had folks come, and you've welcomed them into your homes. And on top of all this, you can skip the next, keep going. Relationships. This is, the guy on the right is the guy that Autumn played with in church service. On the left is about 2004, 2005, when we met Alon and Jaime. And now he came to see us, came from another city, spent 3 days with us on this trip. He now is also a barber. He gave Sam the best beard cut he's ever had. And haircuts that you can see there from Cole. Keep going. I just also point out the two on the wings are student Lucas and Cynthia. And that's a picture from them when they were in school, 5 and 6 years old. So it's about relationships. And kids that have grown up, who we show the pictures that we use for their scholarships. Again, keep going. All right. Now this guy was not on our mission trip. He was on our mission trip. Because A.D. Reynolds is a gentleman who in 1920 established something called a Missionary Emergency Fund. A.D. Reynolds was a successful businessman in Bristol, made lots of money, and his father, he came to visit his parents one time, and his father, when he was leaving, he said they talked about everything except religion, but right before he was getting on his horse to return home, my father put his hand on my thigh and looked up in my face with tears rolling down his cheeks. He said, "My son, I have no fears for your worldly success, but how about your spiritual side?" From that moment on, A.D. Reynolds couldn't control his weeping. He was uncontrolled, and he actually came to a revival at First Presbyterian Church in Bristol, Tennessee, and was saved. Came to the altar and devoted his life and declared his life to Christ. A.D. Reynolds put $75,000 in a fund in 1920 that now produces enough income to distribute 10 times that amount every year, over $750,000, of which our church is a steward of about half of that. That is how we've been able to expand our mission efforts. The help of our church and the gifts of our church have been instrumental. But the A.D. Reynolds Fund, the Missionary Emergency Fund, has allowed to reach beyond our vision, allowed us to reach very far out into the world and give. In Brazil and Ethiopia, we've been devoted to education, the poorest of the poor. And the beautiful thing about, just as A.D. Reynolds' father had said, I'm worried about your spiritual side, these schools are taking and making sure the students are being grounded scholastically and spiritually, which is what it's really all about. Over the course of the 15 years the school has been open, in Brazil, hundreds of students have learned about Jesus, about his hope for their future and his love for them. Families of these students know Jesus firsthand as the church cares well beyond the classroom for them. And Christ is being lifted up, and God is being given the glory daily for a partnership that began with the invitation to see what it's like in Brazil. So from tiny cups of coffee to springs overflowing with God's love, we as a congregation are the ones blessed by witnessing God at work in his world, through us and in us. And I want to close with a quote. Next slide, please. Close with a quote from A.D. Reynolds that inspires me personally and as a community of faith. And it says, "The church that will step out by faith and declare that this evangelization can and shall be done will be the church that all other churches will follow." I'm grateful that we as a church are following A.D. Reynolds and his example. So Sam's now coming up, and after Sam, I know it's closing time, but there'll be a video on that is a gift from our friends in Brazil.
I too will be brief. I want to set the stage for you. Use your imagination. It was the last night we were in Brazil and we're worshiping. And I know it's hard for you to imagine this as good Presbyterians, but we were in, hour 2.5 of the worship service. And I never wanted it to end. I felt like we had just started. The Spirit was flowing. It was a wonderful, wonderful service. And contrary to popular opinion, given my daughter Youngji, I am not a hugger by nature. I just am not affectionate in that way. You might get a hand and a shoulder. That's just how I am. I had a hard time in Brazil, as you might imagine. The Spirit was so present in that place, and we were just being transformed in that worship service. Even I was changed. I even hugged people. It was interesting. And keeping with our tradition, because we've been doing 2 Corinthians, I have a little quote, or I have a scripture I want to read. This is 2 Corinthians chapter 3, verse 17, starting there. "Now the Lord is the Spirit, and where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is freedom. And all of us with unveiled faces, seeing the glory of the Lord as though reflected in a mirror, are being transformed into the same image from one degree of glory to another. For this comes from the Lord, the Spirit." In our partnership, in our time there, in our worship, even me in that moment of being transformed from a not-hugger to momentarily a hugger, all these things, this history of relationship, it's transforming them. And here's the thing, and you need to note this, it's transforming you. I said something that night at the worship service, and I believe it with all my heart. The minute we stop going to Brazil, the minute we stop going to Ethiopia, the minute we stop reaching out in the name of Jesus to share the good news is the minute that this church dies. And I want you to hear that and believe it. Because it is in that process of being with brothers and sisters and doing that work to which we were called, to which Jesus called the entire church. That's what it means to be the mission, or to be the church. And in that mission, we are transformed. We are made new. We become new creation. We experience that down there. And so this is not just a trip we take randomly or every once in a while just to say that we're doing it. This is the lifeblood of who we are as First Presbyterian. And I feel honored that I even had a small part to play in going on that trip. And I look forward to 2021 myself. Maybe I'll go. I don't know. We'll see. It might be a full trip. I think we have a final video, right? And we're going to play that. And I know I can do this.
Para